I'm going to break down why it's important for us to have motivation as a foundation for dog training, what it truly means, and how we can start to use it to manipulate our dog into the behaviors that we want. So, what does motivation really mean? And motivation can be distilled down to basically going towards or away, right? We always want to move towards things that are repetitive, that are pleasurable, that are agreeable. We want to move towards novelty and things that are rewarding, and most importantly, things that are comfortable. And we want to move away from things that we find aversive or that's uncomfortable. We want to move away from annoying or boring things, and we basically want to avoid discomfort in any way, shape, or form. And it's the same for every single species on the planet, and that is why we are alive today. With dogs, we always want to build motivation first before we start to go into communication. One of the reasons we want to do that is because if you think about a kid in the classroom, no matter how much sort of communication you do with that kid in the classroom, if they are messing around, not really paying attention and they're not motivated enough to learn in that lesson, then no matter what communication you put in, we're going to have a kid that is just not going to soak in any of the information. And it's the exact same thing with a dog. If we're not going to spend the time to be able to show the dog that there is motivating things, and we spend the time building motivation, whether that's positive motivation or negative motivation, then we're never going to be able to actually train our dog. And there is something in the dog's mind that basically is motivational maths, is what we like to call it in dog training, where perhaps you are teaching a recall and you've got a piece of food, and to that dog it's maybe a level 4 out of 10 of something that the dog wants to move towards. However, in the environment, because there is perhaps something interesting or novel, or there's something novel, or perhaps they kick into the prey drive, then no matter what you tend to do, you're never going to outcompete whatever that sort of reinforcing or novelty experience that they are having at that moment in time with that 4 out of 10 thing, because they believe that the environment is an 8 out of 10, or perhaps that squirrel's a 10 out of 10. And so we need to find a balance where we can use food in training, we can use play in training, we can use all of the good things, but we can also then use things that are uncomfortable for the dog, or perhaps annoying, perhaps even boring, to make the dog avoid having those kind of aversive experience. And it doesn't necessarily say that we need to have pain to motivate a dog, because that's definitely not what I'm saying. And there is loads of different forms of motivation when it comes to all of this kind of bad stuff that the dogs want to move away and towards. One thing that I want to talk about is pressure, and how every single living organism is basically moving away from any pressure that is basically applied. So let's say you get into your car and that annoying dinging sound beeps because you've not put your seatbelt on. When it comes to motivation, you want to move away from that thing that you are finding annoying, right? So that's what reinforces your decision to put that seatbelt on. And so it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be bad, because that seatbelt noise isn't hurting you in any way, shape, or form. It is just annoying enough for you to take action. And that's kind of what we want to do in dog training. But we want to also give the dogs a very much a reason at the end of the sequence to then be able to actually give something to the dog to go, hey, you made the right decision there, and that's your paycheck at the end. And so motivation is a bit of a difficult one, because we don't want there is no way to kind of measure motivation. There's not like a figure that we can go, okay, he's got a 5 out of 10 food drive and this, that, and the other. At the end of the day, it's about feeling our dog, and it's more of an art, and finding your dog's motivational levels and start to tune it up a little bit through the training that we are going to do in our sessions. So with motivation, it's important to realize one of the reasons why we need it is because we always want to have the dog in a thinking state of mind, trying to actually think about the things that we're going to start to communicate with them. But we need to learn how to motivate our dog first. Whether that's going to be through repetitive things or aversive things, it's going to be completely down to the dog inside of the session. And a lot of the times, we will take a long time to basically build motivation the right way by using all of the good stuff, right? So we use food, we use play, we use movement, we use being able to have freedom as motivation. So understanding motivation is probably one of the key things that I would want you to take away from the foundations of training, because if you rush this process and you try to create a dog that hasn't got a lot of motivation, but and then you're going to try and communicate to that dog, you're going to have a lot of behavior fallout, because there is not that kind of buy-in first. The dog needs to realize what's in it for them to go, okay, there's an opportunity here to get a reward. There's an opportunity here to go towards something that's repetitive. And that brings us on to the types of motivation that we have when it comes to all of the repetitive stuff. So we have food drive. Food drive is a sort of I have a lot of clients in, and they say my dogs won't take food outside at all. And that is because they do have a food drive, but they just know that the environment that they are in is super novel, or perhaps that is pleasurable, or perhaps it's motivated enough to want to stay in this environment because they find it rewarding. Perhaps there's smells, things to chase, things to do, and they know at the end of the day they're going to get a big bowl of food. So straight away, I changed that association, and we want to build a dog with higher levels of food drive, because there's going to be some dogs that have a little bit of a lower food drive than others, and other dogs that are going to be super through the roof, really wanting the food. So depending on your dog, depends on the amount of food drive you have. If you have zero issues with food drive, you probably don't have to go into hand feeding as much, but I do still recommend it because it builds up really nice behaviors outside. When it comes to people saying, "Nah, that's not me. My dog won't take food." Every single living organism on the planet takes food in order to survive, and so there is going to be a level where the dog goes into a bit of a hungrier state of mind, and they go, "Do you know what? I'm actually going to take food." There is going to be your dogs that are very unwell, that are not fit and that are not healthy, and I do recommend, if there isn't any improvement in the first week of starting to hand feed, then definitely go for a vet checkup to make sure there's no underlying problems at all. There is also dogs that find going towards you as a person, perhaps you've just adopted a rescue, quite kind of uncomfortable. And so a lot of the times it's going to take a long time to build that food drive, because they're trying to fight over the fact that it's uncomfortable to move towards to you, because they're just not used to you and they've not built that bond with you. But that brings us on to the social drive. Social drive, every single dog pretty much naturally has, especially your pet dogs, your Labradors, your Retrievers. They've got a good amount of social drive because they have been bred for the last 15,000 years for humans. They're the only real domesticated pets that have been kind of like doing things for us for a long time. And so there's going to be levels of social drive. If you've got a primitive breed, perhaps your Huskies, your Alaskan Mamelutes, your Akitas, the dogs that are in that primitive kind of section, your Shiba Inus, then you're going to see maybe that don't have that much of a social drive, and they are less malleable for change, due to the fact that they are your primitive breeds. And then you've got the other end of the spectrum. And by the way, that's not to say that your husky won't give you a cuddle every now and again, but they're probably more independent thinkers, and they will probably need a little bit more uncomfortable, annoying, aversive, boring things that they need to avoid in order to bring about that social drive. Because I don't know if you know, but like trying to get a husky off lead is notoriously very, very difficult, because they go into maybe like a prey drive, they run off and they do their own thing, and they're very, very independent. They were bred to want to work away from us, and they wasn't bred to work for us. Whereas like your German Shepherds, they've got a lot of social drive. They want to be with you. They want to do things with you. They're very loyal, because of such a high social drive, because we've been utilizing and breeding them for very, very long time. Going on to your prey drive, every single dog on the planet has some level of prey drive. However, there is some dogs that, like, perhaps it's been suppressed out of. Now, there is going to be a few dogs that just won't have any prey drive at all, and a lot of it can be suppression. Perhaps they're in an environment they find uncomfortable, boring. They the environment they want to avoid and get out of. And it will take a lot to actually experience that dog doing predatory action sequence things because it's been suppressed for so long. When it comes to your prey drive, you have different parts of the prey drive, and this system, as soon as the dog like goes into it, it's very difficult to get a dog out of it straight away unless they are kind of very malleable as a dog. So your Labradors, for example. So first you have your orient, so the dog uses its senses to actually find a target to focus on. They then use their eyes to actually look at the thing and to start to hone in on it. Then they use stalking to creep up on the animal that they're about to chase. And then they go into a chase, and that basically puts them into olfactory exclusion phase, where a lot of the times you're never going to be able to communicate with that dog using your verbal cues or using your clicker or whatever it is that you've tried to build up over time. They're going to completely ignore you because of that motivational maths thing that we talked about at the start. The squirrel that they're chasing is a 10, and whatever you're trying to give them is a 5, and you're never going to be quote unquote sexier than a squirrel. I use that term because it's funny, as there is a company out there called Sexier Than a Squirrel that basically try and like teach you that you can be more fun than your squirrel. But there's not, like, I've never experienced a dog that doesn't go into olfactory exclusion. We have to use, and that's one of the reasons why e-collars are the most fantastic part of the modern dog training system, is because we get to actually then use a tactile pressure where they can get a tap on the shoulder to go, ah, okay, mum is actually calling me, dad is actually calling me, let's come back before things get bad. We then have your grab bite, so the dog intercepts it and actually bites the thing. You then have a possess and parade. Some dogs have really high possess and parade where they actually want to keep the thing and they refuse to drop it. A lot of your spaniels, you'll see that they'll run over to you and they'll parade the thing around, and they'll kind of act as it is a trophy. And if you go to grab it, they'll move out the way, and that's basically the parade. They're very proud of the thing that they've won. You then have a kill bite, and your staffies are notorious for, a very harsh kill bite to actually, kill the thing that they have to make sure that its life is ended, so they can actually then dissect and consume it without it running off. So different dogs have different levels of prey drive. I won't go into it too deeply, but what I would recommend is try and start playing with your dog, mimic prey, see what part of the predatory action sequence they like. In our sessions, we can actually talk about how we can start utilizing prey in play to see what the dog is about and see what part they like. So, for example, your pointers, they really love the stalk and they kind of get stuck in motion because that's kind of really genetically reinforcing for them to kind of stare at the bird and things like this. So, have a bit of a research into the breed that you have, see what you think that they might actually like about it, and then also utilize play to try and get some of that predatory action sequence out of them, because you can actually mimic prey in your play. So, yeah. Then that brings us onto our defense drive. Now, defense is where pretty much all reactivity kind of stems from. Whether your dog's reactive because of they're a bit nervous or they want the thing that they see to go away, or perhaps it's a genetic thing. Perhaps there's more defensive dogs. Your Dobermans, your German Shepherds, your Cane Corsos, they're more defensive dogs because that's what they were genetically bred to do. And so different dogs will have a different genetic level of defense drive, but this is where all of your reactivity, if you're dealing with reactivity, comes and stems from, because a dog goes into defense and wants to actually get rid of the thing that that is causing pressure on them, or it's a way of them basically like signaling that they are there. Play drive is probably one of the most important parts of trainings, especially my training system, that we can utilize. Play is really nice because we can actually start to develop a dog that enjoys not just a transactional interaction with you where they just get a piece of kibble, but they actually have a learning event where they do something really well, and then they get a massive hit of dopamine because we can actually play with them, and we can start to play cooperative games or competitive games with them, and we'll go over that more in our sessions that you have. So if you've got any questions about any of the drives, please feel free to bring it up in our sessions, and I'll answer them. And so that kind of gives us a overview of motivation, and essentially we always want to motivate our dog first by using food drive, by developing our play before we start to ask for things. If you're trying to build your play up, you never want to start to ask for outs, or you never want to start to ask for the dog, going into downs and sits and doing obedience with them, because it's going to make the game boring, especially if you haven't got a dog that has such a really high play drive. So you've got to really be careful with how you build it, but essentially we always want to build loads of motivation, lots of motivation that we can actually start utilizing, because that is the foundation of dog training. One of my mentors, Bart Bellon, he is a fantastic trainer. You can go online, have a look at him. He's absolutely fantastic. All of his dogs got tremendous amounts of motivation, but his analogy says we never want to basically motivation is like boiling spaghetti. We never want to put kind of spaghetti in with the water and then start to boil the spaghetti, because and then that way we get sluggy, messy, horrible spaghetti that doesn't really taste nice, that can be sticky. Not that I'm not very good at cooking spaghetti, but ever anyway, what we want to do first is we want to boil the water. We want to make the water hot. We want to motivate the dog first before we add our spaghetti. So before we start to teach any sort of behaviors, because motivation and the dog wanting to move towards and away things is probably arguably the foundation of dog training and how we actually train our dogs.